Hey everyone, I'm coming at you today with a bit of a different video. As you might know, Brisbane Regionals happened recently, and today I thought I would share a deck profile with you. It's not just any deck profile, I have a special guest with me. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sammy, and I am on Harry's team. We had a team of four for this Brisbane Regionals event, and we decided collectively that the best deck in the format that we could play was going to be Vmax. So we're going to take you through how we decided on the balance of Pokemon, item cards, and energy in the deck, and give you some insight into how we played each of our matchups during the event as well.
Yeah, and we'll also go into a bit of a detail on how our days went and maybe some of the matchups that we played against as well. So let's get into it. Sammy, take us away on the Pokemon. What do we have here?
So we've got a pretty standard array of Pokemon. We've got 14 Pokemon, which is what most of the Mew VMAX lists are running. We decided to put in Oricorio because at a big tournament like this, we wanted to make sure that we could play it for defensive matchups or use its glistening droplets attack in certain matchups as well. So we put the Oricorio in there. The only thing that might look a little bit non-standard is that we only have 3 Mew V, and we actually swapped out the fourth Mew V for a Meloetta. So we have 3 Meloettas in our deck. And we believe that this third Meloetta was our key to matchups like single prize matchups and being able to start the Meloetta when it really counted as well.
Yeah, that's right. And in some cases, particularly against the mirror, if you're going first, you want to have 2 single prize Pokemon in play at the end of your turn. Sometimes that is 2 Meloetta, but sometimes you prize one a bit more than you think. And in a large regionals tournament where you're playing at least 16 games, that cannot happen to you at a bad time. You can't also really have Meloetta and Oricorio because your opponent can just play rope to either pick off the Meloetta or leave you with the Oricorio inactive. So that's where the third Meloetta came in, and for the Mew matchups I played, I never really failed to get both Meloetta down on turn 1. The deck is running 4 Genesect V. That is standard. Genesect is the engine that keeps the deck running. The Fusion Strike system ability lets you draw as many cards as you have Fusion Strike Pokemon in play. As you'll see as we go through the deck does not play any supporter cards, so Genesect V is our main engine. This leaves it weaker to things like Parts of the Peak and Weezing's neutralizing gas ability, so we do our best to play around those things because they really cripple our draw engine, and you just do not have a good time if you can't be drawing with your Genesects.
And just to add on to that as well, you'll see that when we break down the item cards, we do have strategies for getting out of those situations. We have things like Escape Rope, we have Cramomatic to go find stadiums, and we have Rotom Phone as well, which might allow us to create some situations where we get the stadium that we need.
So the deck is playing a 3-3 Mew V Max line. Decks are typically running 4 Mew V, but you can get away with 3, I believe. There was an instance where I prized 2 Mew V that could have gotten ugly, but it didn't. Mew V has the Psychic Leap attack that can come into play in a lot of matchups, but the Mew V Max is what we are mainly attacking with in most matchups, I would say. The Max Miracle attack is quite useful. So typically when you use the Cross Fusion Strike to copy one of your Fusion Strike Pokemon's attacks, you are copying Genesect's Technoblast. Technoblast does 210 damage, with the downside that the Pokemon that uses it cannot attack next turn. So in Mew VMAX's case, you'd like to use Max Miracle turn after turn, but that isn't always possible. But 130 damage can really get you there in a lot of matchups like Malamar and Dark Box. Cross Fusion Strike copies the Technoblast in a lot of cases, doing 210 damage. Obviously, as we'll go into later, you have cards that can boost that damage. This allows you to run through things like other VMAXs and the new V-Star Pokemon that we're seeing.
And what we found as well is that you can usually set up a 2-hit KO on a lot of VMAX Pokemon by using Max Miracle first, and then finishing up with a Technoblast to get your 340 damage all up.
Absolutely. And I believe we've gone over the Pokemon here. I might add a little shout out to Oricorio. Absolutely great in the Malamar matchup. Saved me more than a few times. And that Glistening Droplets attack, you'll use it every now and again, but just the fact that it can knock out an Inkay, very, very nice. So let's take a look now into our item cards. Sammy, what do we have here?
So we've decided to play a very heavy line of most item cards, including 4 Battle VIP Pass, 4 Chromomatic, 4 Quick Ball, 4 Ultra Ball, and 4 Power Tablets because we see that all of those are essential. The lines that we cut down on a bit more was Fog Crystal, we cut back to 2, and we have 2 Rotom Phones, and we also have a 4 switching card package in 2 Switch and 2 Escape Rope. And we felt that the balance of the switching cards between these two allowed us to handle most situations. Escape Rope can act as a pseudo boss in some situations where you can actually get a V Pokemon up when they've only got one single prize Pokemon down. But Switch is just useful in other situations, and it can also allow you to Technoblast 2 turns in a row.
Absolutely. A lot of the opponents I was playing would try to defend the 2 prize Pokemon they were playing to set up or evolve later, by leaving it on the bench and leaving a single prizer in the active. If you can use enough of your Genesect ability, or if you get lucky with a Chromatic, you can often force that 2 prizer into the active spot and take a very quick and sneaky 2 prizes. Now, in terms of power, I did mention Mew Vmax copying Technoblast for 210. We do have some item cards that let you boost that. We do run Power Tablets as a 4-of. This is absolutely essential. The Power Tablets boost the attack damage of your Fusion Strike Pokemon by 30 on the turn it is played. It is stackable. You can play multiple in a turn. You also have Choice Belt, which effectively does the same thing as Power Tablets for your Fusion Strike Pokemon, as long as they're attacking into V Pokemon. Players who've been around a bit longer might know these items better as Electro Power and Choice Band, and those saw a lot of high level success. Boosting your math to take crucial knockouts is really pivotal. So this comes up a lot in the mirror match, where if you draw well enough, you can get the modifiers you need to take a knockout on an opposing Mew VMAX.
Yeah, so that's one of the situations where these modifiers are really important. Another situation is when you're up against Arceus V-Star with its massive HP of 280, which can also go up to 310 with a big charm attached. You do find that you need to either two-shot it or get a big turn by attaching Choice Spell and using a few Power Tablets to get there.
Yeah, you don't want to be two-shotting the Arceus V-Star. That's a bit of an ugly situation. You want to try and drive for the one-shot with the Power Tablets and your Choice Belt if you can. If you leave damage on the Arceus V-Star, your opponents can pick it up with Charon's Care. They do tend to play that card at least at a one-of. Yeah, you want to drive for that one-shot if you can, and just take those 2 prizes and keep the tempo going.
And there is another way to get to those big damage numbers using Meloetta's attack and the Fusion Strike energy, but we'll cover that when we get to the energy section of this deck.
Absolutely. So now let's go on to the stadiums. We are running 3 stadiums. This is something we thought was a bit controversial at the time, because a lot of the decks up to this point that we were testing, and the ones that seemed to be getting results prior to Brisbane Regionals, they were running 4 stadiums. This is largely because Mew players are deathly afraid of Path to the Peak and want as many opportunities to bump that stadium if it comes down. Obviously, a turn 1 Path to the Peak from your opponent can be devastating, put you in a horrible situation. So 4 stadiums deals with that a bit better than 3 does. We figured 3 stadiums got the job done fine, as long as your opponent doesn't path you too early, and as long as you're able to build up a hand with your Genesect. If you're able to hold onto a stadium or even leave one on top with Rotom Phone, you should be fine just running 3.
And what we even saw by the winning deck of the day, Natalie Miller's Mew VMAX deck only ran 2 stadiums, and it seemed like she was able to navigate those matchups quite well, even with just the 2. But her deck notably did have 4 Rotom Phone, which allows her to achieve that greater consistency in finding them.
Yeah, I was very shocked to hear that she only played 2 stadiums. I thought that was a bit reckless, but turns out it worked out in the end for her.
And it seems like what a lot of people are doing online now is they're moving towards 3 stadiums, putting 1 stadium back into the list that Natalie played, because they're finding that overall that's giving them more balance and allowing them to play a little bit more consistently.
Absolutely. So let's go now on to the supporters. We are playing 6 supporters in this deck. I would say in the time I've been playing, it is the fewest supporters I've ever run in a deck. So we're running Boss's Orders and Elisa Sparkle. What do they do, Sammy?
So, Boss's Orders is definitely one of your key cards, especially if you do manage to start the game off with a 2 prize knockout, and then you can use the remaining Boss's Orders to get 2 more 2 prize knockouts. But really, it's a very good card and a very flexible card in a lot of situations. You can use it to stall, you can use it to retarget a Pokemon that has retreated to the bench after taking damage, and you can also use it to close out a game.
That's right. We did try out a 4th boss in testing that sort of gave us the wiggle room to throw one away if we needed with Ultra Ball, but there was situations where you might start a hand with 2 boss and you can't throw away 2 boss, not really, and you can't play them out of your hand either. They sort of just become bricks that make your Genesect V a little bit less effective. 3 would usually get the job done, so if you're unlucky enough to prize one, you still have 2 left. In the case where you're in the Mew Mirror and you're going first, typically what I wanted to do was take 3 2-prize knockouts just with the Mew Vmax. I would boss on turn 1 and hopefully boss on turn 2 and 3. And usually if you unprize a boss just by taking those knockouts, it's not too big of a deal. So 3's a happy number. Now we go on to the Elisa Sparkle. Elisa Sparkle is a wild card. You get to target 2 of your Fusion Strike Pokemon in play, search your deck for a Fusion Strike energy, and attach one to each of the Pokemon you targeted. Now, Sammy, what does this mean for some of the Pokemon in this deck?
So all of our main attackers in our deck actually require 2 energy to do a physical attack that deals damage. Mew does have the energy mix attack for 1 energy, but all that does is accelerate 1 energy from deck. So we're looking to get 2 energy onto all of our attackers as soon as possible, and Elisa Sparkle allows us to achieve this. Especially when going second, you can use Elisa Sparkle as well as finding a 3rd Fusion Strike energy to get 3 Fusion Strike energy on board and take a 210 damage attack with Meloetta, which can be devastating to a lot of decks in this format.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's just the bottom we're talking about here. If your opponent leaves something like an Arceus V in the active and you just happen to draw into your tablets or your power belt, you can knock that out too. You can hit for some pretty wild numbers with this Meloetta. So the Melodious Echo attack, it's not just for Meloetta. You can obviously copy that with Mew's Cross Fusion Strike as well. I do recall hitting with Melodious Echo for numbers as high as 370, 400 even in one instance. It's shocking they put that attack on a basic Pokemon, to be honest with you.
And what I found with the Arceus V-Star matchups especially is if you could use Elesa Sparkle to get 4 energy onto your Fusion Strike Pokemon in the 3rd turn of the game, 2nd turn of the game, it allows you to take those knockouts very easily without even needing to have those extra modifiers.
Absolutely. The 4 Fusion Strike energy in play is very frightening for an opponent. In a Mew VMAX matchup, your opponent might see that you've used a few damage modifiers. Those are your Power Tablets and Choice Belt. They might see those in your discard pile and think they're safe from their Mew VMAX getting knocked out, but you show them the 4th Fusion Strike energy, you just pop out 1 more damage modifier, and you're knocking out a Mew VMAX even with your little single prize Meloetta.
And there's another situation where this can be really important as well, where either one of your Pokemon gets knocked out or you use Psychic Leap to shuffle your Mew VMAX back into the deck. Elesa Sparkle allows you to catch back up on those energy attachments and still continue to attack even if one of those things happens.
So that Psychic Leap attack, we'll go into that when we talk about our matchups, but it's important getting to Elesa Sparkle on the next turn and keep swinging. Very valuable in this deck. Last but not least, we can get into the energy. I think we've gone over pretty well enough why the Fusion Strike energies are good and why they're in the deck. We are also running the 2 Psychic energy and the double Turbo energy.
So why we decided to run this specific spread of energy is that the Psychic energy can be very important in the Duraludon matchup, as well as the Psychic energy allows you to have a searchable energy through Fog Crystal and a recoverable energy through the Training Court Stadium. And when your matchups do tend to go longer, especially against those Arceus decks or single prize decks, this can be the key to making sure that you don't run out of ways to attack.
Yeah, that's right. I figured that having Training Court or Fog Crystal, having access to either of those was pretty important sometimes. Just knowing I had that in my hand so that I would have an energy attachment for next turn, that gave me a lot of peace of mind. And I also like just attaching Psychic Energy to Meloetta. Sometimes you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket with your Fusion Strike energies. Sometimes you need to attack with Meloetta turn 1, but putting 2 Fusion Strike energy on it can feel a bit bad, especially when it gets knocked out on the next turn. So it can be nice to just chuck 1 Psychic Energy on there, play the Elisa Sparkle, attack for about 140, maybe a bit more with your modifiers, and you still have enough Fusion Strike energy to attack with Melodious Echo later in the game. Basically, it lets you attack with Meloetta a bit more freely.
And we also need to go over the double turbo energy and why this is a really, really important energy in this build of the deck. It is a new energy that provides 2 colorless energy at the cost of dealing 20 less damage with your attacks. Because this is a double energy that can be used on V Pokemon, which is very, very powerful. And Mew VMAX's Cross Fusion Strike ability uses 2 colorless energy. So what you can do is use the double turbo energy as an out if your Mew VMAX gets knocked out and you have another Mew or Mew VMAX on the bench. It allows you to essentially set up your next Pokemon, next attacker, with 1 energy attachment and not have to rely upon anything else.
Exactly right. We did see the winning deck, Natalie's winning deck, along with everyone else who also played that deck. They ran the 3 double turbo energy in the deck. Now, sometimes the 20 less damage, it's rare that it'll ever be of consequence, but it can be of consequence sometimes. If you're running 3, I think you're in a pretty good position because you get to just attack repeatedly with Mew. You don't have to worry about setting up Lisa Sparkle after the 2nd or 3rd turn in the game. We are running with 1 at this point, and I believe we're pretty happy with 1 double turbo energy in this deck, just as a good backup option, just in case we're falling behind or we get our board wiped of energy for some reason.
Also, having just the 1 double turbo energy and the 2 psychic energy means that it's much easier for us to set up the Meloetta, which is crucial in matchups like single prize matchups. If we had 3 double turbo energy, we'd be attaching a Fusion Strike energy and a double turbo energy just to get that Meloetta off the ground.
Yeah, that would look a little bit awkward, although I probably did do that a few times over the weekend. Sammy, I believe there's 1 card we've missed. It's a pretty important one, I would say, one that probably saved me quite a lot. That is the Rotom Phone. We are running it at a 2 of. Tell us a little bit more about the Rotom Phone.
So what's really interesting about this card is we only put it in about 2 days before the event started. We had been seeing other people start to experiment with this card. It was a card that I had played a lot in Mew VMAX before Ultra Ball came in, and I found that it got me out of a lot of bad spots. So we did our best to try and squeeze some of them in. We managed to get 2 of them in by cutting 2 Fog Crystal, and that's where we are able to squeeze this card in. But this card has so much utility. It's an item card, so it can be used with Cramomatic. You can draw cards with Genesect and then use Rotom Phone to set up your next draw, or you can even use Rotom Phone at the end of your turn once you finish using all of your Genesects to make sure that you draw the perfect card for your following turn.
Yeah, I was a bit skeptical about the Rotom Phone. I just saw it as we're running less cards in the deck. We're just choosing to vacate those card slots and run, I guess you would say, a non-card. But after having tested with it a few times, I mean, if everything were ideal, you would just play 2 battle VIP pass in your first turn, set up your Genesects, keep drawing, have stadiums, and life would be great. But it's not always like that. Sometimes you're going to be using Genesect for maybe 2 cards, maybe even 1 card, and the Rotom Phone can just bail you out of so many dicey situations. So after a few test hands with it, I saw the light, and I figured we should be running it.
And in fact, there were a couple of situations where I was able to get maybe 1 Genesect down, play a Rotom Phone, and find another battle VIP pass, and that got me set up for the rest of the game.
Yeah, just love getting those Genesect trains going. Just Fusion Strike system for 1, get your Genesect, do it for 2, you get the whole board set up when any other deck would just have to announce a pass.
And actually, I think there's one more card we should touch on, and that is Ultra Ball. So the deck radically changed in structure with Brilliant Stars. Even though it's not using many new Brilliant Stars cards, it uses Ultra Ball, Choice Belt, and Double Turbo Energy. But Ultra Ball is key to making this deck very aggressive and allowing you to execute in your strategy of drawing through your entire deck.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time hyping up Ultra Ball to this new team who never really played with it when it first came out. So yeah, I was telling them, hey, this ball card searches for everything in the whole game, and they're like, but it discards 2 cards. Let's get you to bed, Grandpa. No, it's really good. It's amazing in this deck. It's good in pretty much everything. Yeah, Ultra Ball to the future. It's getting to go -3 in a Mew deck, in a deck where you can just keep drawing more cards, is amazing. Can get a bit awkward. Sometimes you have to discard things you don't want, but going down in cards to the point where you just draw back up and get your attacks rolling, it's amazing.
Yeah, this card really was a game changer, and I think it's one of the key reasons that we picked this deck overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been playing Ultra Ball for a long time and feels really good to be back. So, that's the deck out of the way. Let's talk a little bit now about some of the matchups for the deck. So, we probably tested this one the very most of all. What do you think about the mirror, Sammy?
So, with all of my mirror matches on the day of the tournament, I didn't lose a single one. I don't think you lost any of yours either, Harry, did you?
I went 3-0 in the mirror.
Yeah, exactly. And we had a very strong strategy for the mirror. We aimed to go first wherever possible, and what we would do is we would set up our 2 single prize Pokemon so that they couldn't get ahead with their second turn attack. We'd then come back at them with a Meloetta, so that we would be attacking with another single prize Pokemon, and we'd essentially be slowing down the prize race. If we can then start by taking out a 2 prize Pokemon, we can follow up with 2 more 2 prize knockouts. But if we're forced to take out a single prize Pokemon, we can play to the game plan of taking out a 2 prize Pokemon and a 3 prize Pokemon. So what we would do in this matchup is we would try and go 1, 2, 3, and the 3 would require us to assemble all of our modifiers, so our choice belt and 3 of our power tablets, so that we could get that big knockout on their opposing Vmax to either slow them down mid-game or to close out the game. And so how that would usually play out is if we went first, they would knock out our Meloetta, we would knock out their Meloetta. Then they knock out our second Meloetta, and then we'd get to take out either a Mew or a Genesect, because by that point in the game, we'd already set up our Mew VMAX, and we had boss's orders, and we had everything pretty much ready to go. And then what we did from there is we tried to discard as many cards as possible, find the power tablets, find the choice belt, and close out the game by knocking out a Mew VMAX.
Yeah, there are a lot of situations where you will need to plow through a 3-prizer to win the game, but if you're going first, you sometimes have the luxury of just going boss, boss, boss 3 turns in a row. Obviously that's a bit easier said than done, but getting to boss up a Genesect and sort of damage your opponent's draw engine when you go first is very powerful. It also means you don't have to worry so much about setting up your Elisa Sparkles or your Meloettas. You just get to keep driving at them with the Mew VMAX. But yeah, obviously in our testing we've learned to be conservative with our boosting resources and try to hold on to them for a big Mew VMAX knockout when we could.
And what we tried to do most of all was to make sure that we attacked with the Meloettas in the early game, and then we progressed to attacking with Mew VMAX in the late game, so that we don't expose our Mew VMAX until we absolutely have to.
Also, another shout out to Oricorio here. If the opposing Mew VMAX has a double turbo energy attached, and you have Oricorio in play, they're effectively doing 40 less damage. So in order to get the KO on your Mew VMAX, they have to find every last modifier in the deck. There's no room for error. They need to play 4 tablets and 1 choice belt. So I didn't see that happen. Bit unfortunate. Would have been good for the old bingo card, but yeah, none of my opponents got so lucky.
I got lucky there. I played all 4 power tablets in 1 turn and got that Mew VMAX KO.
Yeah, I had the chance to BM on an opponent and dig for my 4th power tablet and hit for some obscene number, but I thought it'd just be nice and finish them off then and there. So the next matchup we can talk about is the Arceus and Teleon matchup. Now, I played against one of these. It was an amazing match, but I ended up losing in the end.
I also played one of these, and I went loss, win, loss. I found that when I went first, I was at a much bigger advantage. But when I went second, sometimes I would just get bricked out by part of the peak and I wasn't able to recover.
For me, I started a Genesect in Game 3 of my matchup, and my opponent was able to basically do what I do to Mew players, which is knock out a Genesect 3 turns in a row with bosses. It's an interesting matchup, and yeah, obviously if they get Path into play, they can really ruin your day, but you can defend against that with Rotom Phone. My Arceus and Teleon opponent was actually playing Judge, which is a card that we just don't see a lot of. Typically when decks play Hand Disruption, they go for Marnie because you get an extra card off Marnie, but the way Marnie works is that you look at the cards on top of your deck, whereas Judge shuffles them in. So if you leave a Stadium on top with Rotom Phone, they get to shuffle that in and maybe hold you off from getting that Stadium. So it's an interesting matchup, and just like the mirror, it favors speed and getting a lot of damage on board early. Obviously, we mentioned earlier that the Arceus V-Star has 280 hit points, but that can be brought up to as high as 310 with the big charm. Can be a bit of a headache to spend a lot of your damage modifiers just for 2 prizes, so you do have to sort of plan your turns ahead of time and really map out what you're going to do in the late game if you don't have enough damage to get the one shot.
So I think that this matchup is actually quite workable, but it requires a bit of a change in strategy. I think what you're trying to do is get all 4 of your Fusion Strike energy onto your Muse so that they can't easily be removed from the board. If you manage to do that, it's a pretty clean victory as you just knock out Arceus after Arceus and then clean up any single prize Pokemon that remain. Another thing that you have to really try and be aware of is the path to the peak. So if you manage to find a Stadium, hold on to it for as long as possible. Don't even try and play the Rose Tower down to draw more cards and set up, because if they use their V-Star ability, Starbirth, and they find that Stadium, you're going to need the counter Stadium to unbrick yourself and have any chance whatsoever of recovering.
Yeah, that nearly happened to me against my Arceus and Teleon opponent. I went to play the Rose Tower and pulled it up. I wanted to hold on to it just in case, and my opponent remarked to me, you're going to make me play Judge, huh? I'm like, yep, that's right. You're not getting this Stadium out of me that easy.
And you might even consider holding onto a Cramomatic, because it could be your get out of jail free card, and it could find you exactly the Stadium you need to keep going.
Yeah, it would have been nice if that happened for me, but who's complaining?
I think just to wrap up this matchup, you want to try and go first as much as possible. Sometimes you just end up not winning that flip and you have to play for your life. But this is a matchup with a bit of thought and a bit of practice, you'll get better at over time.
So next we go to a different Arceus build, that is the Dark Arceus build. Now, I myself did not play against one of these. You did, Sammy,
yes.
So tell us about it.
So this matchup was very scary. They have a couple of attackers that they can set up very easily in the Galarian Moltres V and the Hooper V as well. And Hooper V, of course, counts as both a Psychic and a Dark type, so it's a very versatile Pokemon, but they both require 3 energy to attack. But because they have Arceus V-Star and Arceus V, they can actually get the energy attached to these Pokemon very quickly. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to remove those attacking Pokemon from the board, if you can, or if they only have one Arceus available, to try and remove that Arceus before they can set up the other attackers. And unfortunately for myself, when I played this matchup, I wasn't able to set up 2 games in a row, and that was the end of that matchup for me. But I think if I look at this matchup a bit more, it's all around trying to set up your board without evolving into Mew VMAX until you absolutely need it, because the Mew VMAX is going to give them an easy 3 prizes. They hit you for weakness, they can knock it out. If you can play conservatively and play carefully, I think you'll be able to get there by bossing up the attacking Pokemon and not exposing your Mew VMAX until you absolutely have to.
Yeah, we weren't quite sure how much of a threat this deck would be going into Brisbane. We did see it take some online results here and there, but I think the Arceus variant we were most afraid of was Duraludon, which I think you'll see here has informed a lot of the card choices in our list. So next up we go to the single prize deck matchups. I myself played against a Malamar deck, and let me tell you right now, Oricorio was the MVP of that matchup. Oricorio took prizes, Oricorio defended its teammates. Without it, I probably don't win that matchup. It is wild seeing a Genesect V take 180 where it should have taken 200, or a Mew VMAX take 300 where it should have taken 320. It really got in there, and it just carried the whole team on its back in that matchup.
Yeah, I played one of these matchups too. It did end up being a draw, because we took one game each in winter time. Everything that Harry said is right. And another thing you want to do is try and attack with Meloetta turn after turn for as long as possible so that you don't expose your two prized Pokemon to being knocked out by the Malamar. And what's really interesting about the Malamar deck is they don't play many bosses orders, they play one or maybe two at most. So it's pretty safe even if one of your Mews gets damaged to just put it on the bench and attack with something else.
Yeah, I was pretty secure in the knowledge that when my Genesect got hit for 180, once I drew the switch and put it on the bench, yeah, it was going to live. It was going to live on the bench. You see the card like Power Tablets, you see a single prize matchup, and you think, I'm not going to need this. Don't think that. It is pretty good. Oftentimes, your Mew Vmax will not be knocked out by a Rapid Strike Tentacles. If you play 2 Power Tablets, you can hit for 130 with Psychic Leap. So you can shuffle the Mew and that damage back into your deck. You can effectively put them one attack behind, and you get the advantage of knocking out a Malamar and forcing your opponent to dig more resources to hit harder with another Malamar next turn.
One other thing I found was it was useful sometimes to use your boss's orders strategically. If they only had one artillery on their board, knocking that out can stop them from getting things like Karina's Focus, or the extra Malamar that they need, or even the Spiral Energy that they need to attack. Usually they get multiple Cinccino down though, so it's not effective to boss those up.
If you have the luxury to do so early in the game, I do recommend attacking things like the Remoraid and the Minccino. But yeah, don't focus too much on the Inkays and Malamars. Like, once they're in play, they're in play. But if you cripple their draw engine, they're not going to be hitting you for very much damage.
Yeah, that's right. And there was another single prize matchup that I did want to talk about, and that was the Zoroark Stage 1 box. So what this deck aims to do is it uses Zoroark's ability to put cards like Altaria, Flapple, Golisopod into play, even Minccino as well to draw more cards. And it's using those Pokemon as techs against things like Vs, against Pokemon that have abilities. It also runs Dark Energy and the Galarian Moltres to shore up its Mew VMAX matchup. Because if the Mew VMAX player is able to Psychic Leap over and over again, and not expose their 3 prize Pokemon, that's usually how you can get the prize race in your favor. You also have to try and attack with Meloetta as often as possible, similar to the Malamar matchup. But another feature of this Zoroark Stage 1 box was the Golisopod's attack does 30 plus 50 more for each V in play. So sometimes you have to limit your draw engine to only 1 or 2 Genesect to make sure that they can't knock out your Mew V, your Genesect, or your Mew VMAX very easily.
Yeah, that is an interesting deck, the old Zoroark box. Yeah, interesting you can just clump a bunch of stage 1s together and it's a deck, but I think it's really cool, and yeah, probably worth respecting if you're playing Mew, and probably worth playing if you have the cards. Seems pretty cool. So those were the matchups we mainly wanted to talk about. I think now we wanted to just talk a little bit about our team and how we fared at the Brisbane Regionals.
So we had 4 people in our team, and we decided early on that it was going to be the 4 of us. We could then easily test 2 matches at a time, with 2 of us playing the other 2. We also were very confident in everyone's ability to make it to practice sessions, to give their input on the structure of the deck, and to play the deck very well. So we had myself, Harry, Aiden, and Zach, and we all scored in the top half of the event. I was at 75th, Zach was at 47th place, Aiden was at 25th place, and Harry got all the way to 22nd place.
Yeah, that's right. It's my first championship points in about 3 years, so I'm pretty happy to have scored well with that deck. Even more remarkable is that I started my day at 0-1-1, Aiden started his day at 0-2, and we both ended up at 5-2-1. And this was Aiden's first regionals, Sammy's first regionals too, so I'm very proud of getting the whole team together, getting 60 cards that we all liked, and just doing our best at this tournament.
Yeah, and although I only got 75th, I actually started out the day really well. I got a draw and then a win, and then I was 1 card away from winning an unfavourable matchup against Eternatus VMAX. And I think if I had kept that momentum up, I would have been scoring around the same as Harry and Aiden as well. But I'm not unhappy with my results. I'm going to keep practicing, I'm going to keep improving, and I'm going to show that I can do just as well as anyone else on the team.
I think you've got the goods. I think you've done really well at locals recently. Yeah, you've really developed as a player recently, and Yeah, I think 75th. I think you can do a bit better than that. I believe we'll all be in attendance at Melbourne in 3 months' time. That will be the first event of the Astral Radiance format, I believe. As for what we're going to bring to that, who can really tell? But so the deck's called Moneyball Mew. Sammy, why is it called Moneyball Mew?
Because this deck gets on base.
Because it gets on base.
And we found that especially with Aiden as well, it was a really good metaphor for him to motivate himself. And when he got that first one, he's like, yeah, got on base. And he kept that momentum up and got all the way to 25th place.
Yep, I guess we could say Aiden got on base. Sammy, is there anything else that we wanted to talk about with this deck?
No, I think we just wanted to acknowledge that we thought that this was the strongest deck in the format. We also knew that there were going to be a lot of counters for it, but we did a lot of practice. This was our first time that we'd formed a team around a deck for an event as well. And I think all of the practice that we've done so far is going to help us for the future. And I think if you want to prepare for a big event like this, these are some of the things that you want to do as well. You want to research what the meta is. You want to compile a list of what you think the tier 1 decks are going to be. You want to choose a deck and then practice the heck out of it.
Knowing what the deck does and knowing how to respond to any situation, I found having that knowledge really helped me at this tournament, and I had the experience from prior tournaments to know that, yeah, just having a good knowledge of anything that might come up is very good to have.
In fact, it was very interesting sometimes to see people who didn't know what certain cards did. Like some people didn't know what Oracorio did, or they hadn't seen Rotom before. And being on the other side of that and knowing what all the cards do really makes you feel more confident and allows you to carry that through the entire event.
Yeah, I believe if you practice more than your opponents, that probably gives you the edge over.
Alright, and that's about it for this deck review. Thank you so much for going through this with me, Harry, and I hope that my insights were helpful too.
That's alright. I just want to thank you for joining me with making this video. I want to thank Aiden and Zach. Also want to give a shout out to brokenvase Games. They've sponsored us for this event. They really helped us out with getting ready for this event, and yeah, thank you for watching.
See you next time.
See you next time. Yeah, for now we've brought this deck. It's called Moneyball Mew. Sammy, why is it called Moneyball Mew?
I actually don't know. Why is it called Moneyball Mew?